Despite mixed critical and audience reception, the second Jurassic Park movie was still a massive financial success upon its release in the spring of 1997, sending a clear message to Universal. This was a franchise. So obviously they had to crank out another one as soon as possible. Unfortunately, JP3's pre-production was wrought with difficulty, being the first Jurassic film not to be based on a Michael Crichton novel, as well as the first to not be written by David Koepp. Steven Spielberg also declined to return as director, instead handing that duty to Joe Johnston. But a change in director was the least of the film's worries. The writing process was a friggin' disaster. You know how most movies tend to have 1 to 2 writers? Maybe 3 or 4 on occasion? This movie had 7 according to my count, only 3 of which ended up credited in the final film. What were the major differences in each of the drafts and various revisions? Oh, I'll get around to all that, but from the outset, you have to understand that JP3's development was a mess. Way more so than the first one, or even The Lost World. Does it show in the final product? Well, yeah. I mentioned last time that after years of not caring for The Lost World, I eventually came around to it, and now find myself appreciating the film much more than I used to. I cannot say the same for Jurassic Park 3. Not that there aren't things I like about it, but when taken as a complete package, and especially as a follow-up to the first 2, yeah, it's pretty bad. Say what you will about Lost World, but at least it felt like a proper continuation. It upped the ante, it expanded the universe. It wasn't always the best movie, but it did its job as far as being a sequel. JP3 just feels like a cheap knockoff. Rushed, ill-conceived, and lacking in any clear vision. It's not the worst Jurassic movie, but it is definitely the weakest of the original trilogy in my opinion. But whatever. In spite of all I can say about the movie itself, there is still some interesting cut content to explore. So let's stop beating around the bush and dig into the deleted scenes of Jurassic Park 3. But before I can do that, I've been hearing through the YouTube analytics grapevine that only 1.3% of my viewers in the past month have been subscribers. If you enjoy my videos and want to see more like them, or not like them if we're being totally honest, remember to actually subscribe. It's more than just a dopamine hit, it really does help my channel in the long run. And it's also a pretty strong hit of dopamine as an added bonus. So yeah, if you like this video or my other ones and haven't subscribed, make sure to do that if you think it'd be worth your while. Alright, on with the video. To give you a taste of how different the various drafts of JP3 were, let's start with a rundown of their plots, beginning with the first draft, which is also the one we know the least about. The initial JP3 script was written by Craig Rosenberg in June of 1999, and followed a group of 5 teenagers being marooned on Isla Sorna, and that's all there is to tell about it, really, at least as far as the plot goes. Supposedly, this script would have included the aquatic reptile Kronosaurus, as well as a scene of the characters evading velociraptors on motorcycles. It may have even incorporated an earlier idea by Spielberg of Alan Grant living on Isla Sorna, quote, like Robinson Crusoe. I've also heard that the script was being rewritten by William Goldman. Yes, that William Goldman, at the time it was rejected. Johnston didn't like the idea of Grant living on Sorna. He just didn't buy that that character would willingly return to Dinosaur Island after the first movie. He also wasn't overly keen on the rest of Rosenberg's script and was quoted as saying, "It read like a bad episode of Friends, just not that good. We just took one look at it and went, okay, we just gotta start over." Which is exactly what they did, and by early 2000, a new draft written by Peter Buchman had been submitted. And this one we actually know a little bit about. Yay! Let's see what secrets are lying in wait, shall we? So Buchman's first draft does share, some similarities with the final movie, but it also has a lot more meat to it, with an entirely separate B-plot taking place on mainland Costa Rica revolving around an investigation into a series of killings undergone by a US State Department representative, Harlan Finch, and environmentalist Simone Garcia. It basically would have been a murder mystery, but with dinosaurs. Running parallel to that would be the main plot set on Site B, which is somewhat close to the final movie's story. Except instead of it being a covert rescue mission by a paint and tile salesman cosplaying as a rich guy, it would have actually just been a sightseeing tour gone wrong chartered by an actual wealthy businessman, Paul Roby, the script's version of Paul Kirby. Accompanying Roby would have been Alan Grant, obviously, assistant paleontologist Billy Hume, not Brennan, Paul's son Miles instead of Eric, Cooper, his bodyguard, and Paul's girlfriend, Susan Brentworth. Paul would have been a widower in this version rather than a divorcee, oddly enough, much like Grant was in the original book. Maybe that was intentional, I don't know. Most of the dinosaur shenanigans on Isla Sorna will ring some bells. You got the plane crash, the boat attack, the aviary chase, though one big difference is that in this script, Billy actually dies from the pteranodons. Oh wait, that was in the final draft too. And probably the intention while filming. Oh no, what am I saying? Clearly this blood pooling out of his body and this obvious heroic sacrifice indicates that him surviving was always the intention, just like how Muldoon's survival was planned from the start. Or, no, that's too obvious. Getting back on track, one actual difference between this and the final draft is that Cooper stuck around for a time rather than dying almost immediately after landing. He's also got more of a history with the Roby family, being their personal bodyguard rather than just a hired mercenary. There was also apparently another attempt at a Raptor motorcycle scene in this script. What was people's deal with this? This concept was being toyed with since The Lost World and appeared in not one, but 2 proposed drafts for JP3, and it wasn't until 14 years later that it actually made it into a Jurassic movie. Was it really that important that this image be brought to the silver screen? But all that small potatoes to what has got to be the biggest difference between this draft and the later one, and that's the ending. After the Spinosaur attacks the boat and is driven off, the US government sends in fighter jets to bomb the island, almost definitely inspired by the ending of the book. But they don't finish the job when they see the survivors on a nearby ridge and land to rescue them instead. Grant stays behind on the island, harkening back to Spielberg's original premise, and from there the film would come to an eventual close. I'm guessing the dinosaur murder mystery plot was resolved at some point too. These scenes garnered this script the proposed title of Jurassic Park Extinction, and for all intents and purposes, this was going to be the movie. Everybody seemed cool with it, except Joe Johnston. He felt that Buchman's draft was too complicated, and so brought in new writers to help streamline the narrative. Alexander Payne, yes, that Alexander Payne, Jim Taylor, an uncredited John August, and an even more uncredited Tom Perrotta. He wasn't even listed on the film's screenplay. They cut the B-plot, trimmed a handful of dinosaur sequences, completely changed the ending, and I'm just going to assume the Allen Raptor was one of their ideas. I'm not sure if Buchman's original script would have made for a great movie, but I have a really hard time believing it wouldn't have been better than what we got. Things like Billy's definitive death and the vastly superior ending as compared to the movie, which doesn't even end so much as it just kind of stops, seem like major improvements. The stuff on Costa Rica also sounds neat. It would have been something a little different, but in a good way. More than anything, this synopsis sounds like it would have been more deserving of its title. A big problem I have with Jurassic Park 3 is how uneventful it is. Other than the returning characters, the whole thing reads more as a side story than a mainline Jurassic film. And if it had just been a side story, it might have been kind of fun, or at least easy to ignore. But this wasn't called Telltale Presents Trespasser, a Jurassic Park story. It was called Jurassic Park 3, and when you title it that and come in basically saying, yes, this is the movie, this is the trilogy, this is Jurassic Park 3, I think it's fair for audiences to expect something more substantial. This would have been that, and it's kind of unfortunate that it not only got thrown out, but that the entire script itself has yet to be released. Oh well, the movie we got is the movie we got, so let's yap about that some more. Finally, after all that pre-production drama, how about the scenes that at least made it as far as the final script, if not filmed? Well, there actually aren't as many of those as you'd expect, at least not as many interesting ones, but there are a few curiosities to pick apart. So let's get those going by tearing open an old wound and discussing the Spinosaurus versus T-Rex battle. Yeah, it feels a bit like I'm beating a dead horse, but to come at it with a somewhat different point of view. Did anyone else have a thought similar to the leaf grab from the first movie whenever they would see the behind-the-scenes footage for JP3 of the animatronic dinosaurs sizing each other up? I know I sure did. Well, that was all filmed for a lengthier version of the fight scene that could be observed in Payne, Taylor, and August's revised draft. This would have featured a handful of unrealized elements, such as the T-Rex slapping the Spinosaurus with its tail, the Spinosaurus kicking the T-Rex, causing blood to spill out, and rather than finishing the Rex off with a nice clean neck snap, the Spinosaur would have instead administered a much more brutal demise, clamping down on the Rex's neck and slowly crushing the life out of it, which actually makes more sense in accordance with Spinosaurus' anatomy. You mean to tell me this Gargoyle-ass looking motherfucker could near effortlessly snap that thick, meaty, firm T-Rex neck? I think not. The suffocation death makes much more sense to me. It also would have lended the scene a more brutal touch that I feel it and much of the rest of the movie is lacking. Granted, all the JP movies are PG-13, but JP3 feels like the most PG out of all of them. And I'm not talking like Jaws PG either. It's just missing that edge that the first two had for me. Outside of Udesky's death and seeing Ben's skeleton, which looks like a Halloween decoration, it's kind of tame. I think this scene would have helped rectify that. But you know what the best T-Rex death would have been? The one that actually happened to the animatronic. Yeah, because the reason the in-camera stuff was cut was because during rehearsal, the Spinosaurus animatronic took a swipe with its claw and ripped the head off the T-Rex. Now that would have been awesome. And again, a much better use of the Spinosaurus' tool set, don't you think? Because look, I don't think the problem people have with this scene was that the T-Rex lost. It's more that the whole fight feels like a throwaway joke rather than an epic clash between two titans. Yet, in a baffling deletion, the movie sort of solved its own problem before unsolving it. You'll see what I mean. Or hear what I mean, rather, because one of JP3's main redeeming qualities is Don Davis's score. Sure, John Williams is all but irreplaceable, but Davis did a good job at both adapting John's material and creating his own new stuff that still blends well with Williams' work. But one of my favorite tracks from Davis' score is one that didn't even make it into the movie. It's called Clash of Extinction, and it was originally set to play over the Spinosaurus T-Rex fight, but was cut for reasons? The best I can figure is that it was meant to play over the extended version of the fight, and after it was cut down, the track no longer synced as well. But come on, soundtracks have parts shaved off of them all the time to better match up with the final version of a sequence. Why couldn't they have done that here? A handful of videos exist of fans laying the track over top the scene, and it plays so much better this way. It definitely gives the fight more impact and makes it feel like a proper battle with this exciting action music playing over it. I guess you could argue a lack of music makes it more realistic or something, but I don't think realism was the intention for this scene. This is pure candy filmmaking. It's big dinosaur versus biggerer dinosaur. Just play the music over it. It's not as if this track would have saved this fight from backlash. It'd still be under a minute long and occur less than a third of the way through the movie, instead of at least waiting until after the halfway point like they should have. But hey, it would have softened the blow. An inconsistency often pointed out with this film is that Isla Sorna looks noticeably different than it did in The Lost World. The redwoods have been traded out for a much more tropical setting that's reminiscent of the first movie, due to JP3 being filmed in Hawaii again, while Lost World was filmed in California. Fans have tried to explain the disparity in the two locales by surmising that maybe both movies took place on different parts of the island. After all, Isla Sorna is quite a bit bigger than Nublar. Maybe the larger size could give way to more variation in terrain? Probably not. I'll admit this is more of a failing of The Lost World than JP3. I mean, what the hell kind of tropical island has freaking sequoias in it? I'm getting off track again. Point is, you can make the argument that JP3 was just course correcting and that the different regions theory makes sense in universe. Well, not in the script it didn't. See, there's a brief part in said script when the characters are entering the InGen compound, and Grant peers through a window of an old beat-up truck, which the script says is partially caved in, like some giant head butted the glass. Think back to Lost World. It actually calls direct attention to what was supposed to be the same truck the Raptor in the last movie busted its head through when trying to get at Malcolm, thus proving that, at one point, this was supposed to take place in the same general area as Lost World. I guess the InGen compound was also supposed to be the worker village, even though it looked completely different. You know, I've spent a lot of this video ripping JP3 a new asshole and pointing out scenes that would have improved the movie if they had been kept in. I'm gonna have to deem this an exception and concede a point to the filmmakers. Good call, guys. An overall missed opportunity in this movie was the gang of mercenaries the Kirbys hired to fly them to Sorna. They had the opportunity to be fun side characters that, yeah, are mostly just there to die, but you're kinda bummed when they do. Like the Marines from Aliens. But instead of that, two of them get taken out pretty quickly, leaving only Udesky as a small glimpse of what they could have done with these guys. Even he only makes it about halfway through, but his claw-digging, neck-snapping demise is certainly one of the more memorable parts of the film. What might have made it more memorable though is if Udesky actually fought back like he was supposed to. Set photos portray actor Michael Jeter holding a stick that he was going to use to defend himself against the Raptors before being overpowered. This is another one I can see why they deleted it. I mean, it's not particularly necessary. I don't think leaving it in would have hurt the movie. I don't think keeping it out hurt the movie. That is all. Our final deleted scene takes place in the climactic river attack with the Spinosaurus and can be found in the final shooting script. Instead of the flare gun ending where this aggressive hyper-carnivore that actively hunts T-Rexes and has been pursuing the characters through the entire film just runs away, we would have instead seen Alan Grant using the Velociraptor resonating chamber to call a pack of raptors to the scene and have them do battle with the Spinosaurus. Things wouldn't have ended well for the Spinosaur, as it would eventually be overwhelmed and brought down by the smaller predators, one of whom would have seen the humans retreating, but decide to return to the larger carcass. T-Rex from earlier in the movie could have taken notes. Anyway, this fight sounds pretty cool. It isn't described in much detail in the script, so I can't say much more about it. One thing I will say is that it would have been a much better payoff to the Raptor resonating chamber compared to the movie, which had none. Yet they kept it in anyway, even though Alan using it at the end didn't affect anything. They got scared off by the sound of the helicopter, not Grant, so it was totally pointless. God, fuck, I do not particularly care for this picture. So that's Jurassic Park 3. I said up top that I'm not a big fan, and the more I learn about the history behind this film, the more reinforced that stance becomes. A lot of the deletions don't make sense to me, and I'm not kidding when I say there's a decent movie hiding somewhere in this one that just seemed to get suppressed at every turn. What we're left with doesn't do much for me. It feels unsubstantial, incomplete, one might say. I made a lot of friends last episode when I voiced my appreciation for The Lost World and how I regard it as an underrated movie. Well, this is my penance. I don't like JP3, and knowing what it could have been does not help. You know what though? That's okay. I don't need to like everything. It's not as if me disliking something gets rid of or spoils the things I do. Maybe I should just stick to those and let the people that do have a good time with this movie just enjoy what they enjoy. To each their own, as they say. Regarding the future of these deleted scenes videos, I'm not going to cover the Jurassic World movies, at least not right away. I'm a little Jurassic'd out by this point, so the next episode is going to be something entirely different. And then that's going to be it for Season 2 of EnnEmmEee Reviews. When I began this season back in June of last year, I had less than 50 subscribers. Now I've amassed over 600, and it's only going up from there. I gotta admit, there have been times where I've gotten discouraged, thinking about how much bigger so many people's channels were than mine, and how much faster they took off, but I'm trying to regulate that. We're all moving at our own pace, trying to find our niche and the people who enjoy our content for what it is, and will gladly see more of it. Have I truly found that yet? I don't know, but I can't shake the feeling that it's somewhere in my future. And to the people that have been here since the beginning, I'm always going to remember that, and I hope you're in it for the long haul. Thanks for watching, have a great day, and until the season finale, see ya.